There we go. Awesome. Well, again, I'm Ethan Williams. I'm the principal at Clairemont High School, and I want to welcome everyone to our third cluster meeting of the school year. We're excited to kind of hear about all of the fantastic things happening in our cluster at our various sites. We also have some folks joining us tonight to present on some information that I think is really, really important. I know my parent liaison, Crystal Troll, and I had a chance to talk a little bit about not only from the school perspective, but especially from the parent and the community perspective. What are those pieces of information that I think would be really helpful for families and communities to know, especially with the time we're in right now, as like I was sharing, when we start to think about budget and upcoming school years, as well as addressing some of the needs on our campus. So we're excited to have some guests here today to kind of share a little bit about the work happening not only in our cluster, but in our district. And so what we hope to do really quickly before we kind of jump into some of the larger presentations is give my colleagues and I a chance to just share a little bit about what's going on in our schools and in our communities. So I think what we'll probably do, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but maybe we'll just sort of start alphabetically, and we can start with Stephen Lewis, principal over at Alcott.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're doing well and ready for a weekend. It might be wet, it looks like, but things are going great here. Really, really pleased with the way we're kind of wrapping up the end of the year. We've had a really strong focus after our needs assessment. We were able to collect over, I think it was 360 parent and staff responses on a Google Doc. Able to use that to kind of build some of our focus areas in our budget and kind of talk a lot about what our direction has to be. And one of those big areas has always been the additional support for staff and students. I've kind of always coined the term, we need more positive adult influence on our campuses, whether it's elementary or up. And I'm very excited about we've got 14 interns coming, a mix from 6 amazing Clairemont High School interns. This go around was really exciting. Got to my table, and last time I was up against Petco and all these people and not as many, and this time we were just we were packed. I think I had 25 people and I can only take 6, so really excited about what they're going to be doing to help out our kids on campus. And then also we formed a really strong partnership with San Diego State, and we're bringing in 6 seniors that are child development majors, and we had them kind of select and express where their areas of interest are. And luckily those 7 interns picked areas from psychology to OT with infants to working with front office and administration. So looking forward to some solid interns coming in. And then we had a really fantastic Black History Month celebration that I've got a lot on our website. So we're doing a lot on our website, a lot of pictures. So feel free to go to that Alcott website and see all the things we're doing on Twitter. And now we're getting ready for how we're going to value women and Women's History Month. So we're looking forward to that. So everything's going really well. I'm looking forward to close out our SBB and looking forward to collaboration with our area superintendent on our next steps to get us to that next level.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. Maybe Leslie over at Bay Park.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good evening. A couple things that I would like to share. I'm so happy that our COVID protocols have been relaxed. We're looking forward to a jogathon coming up outside, letting volunteers and participants on our site from our community. So we're excited about that. That's coming up. Bay Park is known for our morning openings, and before COVID, they were every single day. And of course, we haven't had them, but after spring break, we're going to start off with 1 a week. So every Monday, we're going to start having our morning openings and inviting our community back on campus. And so we're excited to just get that community feel again. So excited about those things. Oh, and also spring open house. We're going to have our spring open house. So we'll figure it out when we get there. Really excited about it. One kind of thing to brag about is our safety patrol won a big trophy for the best. What was it? Had a really kind of a cute name. It was the best squad for the Northern Division. I forget the exact phrase, but big trophy, like big trophy. I'm like, wow, we get to keep it for a year and then pass it along maybe to the next school. We'll fight for it again. So that was kind of fun. And then I also want to highlight Laura Tinsley, who is here joining us. Wave your hand, Laura. I know she hates to be embarrassed, but I'm going to embarrass her anyway. So she just got a big write-up in our e-blast for her volunteer work for our school and community. And Laura's here at the community of schools every time. And I just so appreciate her and the work she does. She's a fabulous second grade teacher, president of our school foundation, and attends all of our PTA board meetings and association meetings. So just thank you, Laura. Well deserved. Yay.
Awesome. Thanks, Leslie. How about Linda over at Cadman?
Well, we too are very excited that we are back to being healthy and ready and all of those great things. Our kids are back in classrooms, our teachers are back in classrooms. So we're back into the cadence of the chaos, I guess. One of my teachers looked at me yesterday and went, "What were you thinking?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Tell me more." And she said, "You had the 100th day of school. We had Valentine's Day. We had, we did a big, huge dance party on 2/22/22 at 2/22. And of course, the sky opened up and started to pour rain on us while we were out there in our dance party in our tutus and ties and everything else. And then we did Dr. Seuss Day yesterday." And I said, "Well, really, none of those were kind of like I designed them. They just happened to all fall into this very short window of time." But it was so much fun to see the glee and the joy and all of those things. Today we have our very own worm bed for our sage garden. And so the worms have arrived. So I can't tell you how many friends I had carrying worms around, and then being very caring about understanding that they need to go find water because worms need to be hydrated. So I'm nervous that our worms are going to get wet tomorrow in the rain. Everybody's assuring me that they will be fine. They survive out in nature all the time. So we're just finding the joy in everything every single day. Our classrooms are thriving. Our kids are excited, and we're excited to begin to open more things back up for our families. So we're happy in our nest.
Oh, that's awesome, Linda. Makes me tempted to be an elementary school principal. Sounds like a blast. How about Jonathan over at Holmes?
Good evening, everyone. I am sitting in my car right now at a lacrosse practice, so that's why you don't see my video. But we also finalized our budget for the 22-23 school year. Our school community is very excited. There's lots of interest for the Universal Transitional Kindergarten that'll be starting at all of our schools next year. We're excited for that. We also have the Sage Garden program. We've completed 5 cooking lessons and almost 5 gardening lessons. We invited Lamont Interim Superintendent Lamont Jackson to come out next week to visit. And so hopefully we'll get some good pictures of him in an apron or planting some plants. So we'll see how that goes. We have our Jogathon coming up March 18th. We're excited about that. It's our biggest fundraiser. Usually we raise about $50,000. So we're really trying to meet that goal again. We also have an open house scheduled in April, along with an indoor scholastic book fair. We're excited. And the student council, we meet once a week, and I really enjoy the student council meetings. And I'll have a very special announcement on Monday. We also do a morning assembly where I'm going to let them know that we are going to, we have the masks off at recess, of course, it's an option, but then they're going to be able to play amongst each other at their grade level recess, morning and lunch recess. So that's going to be a very well-received announcement on Monday.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan. And then I don't think I saw Peggy on here, so maybe we will shift over to Principal Golias.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My virtual background here is a new gym that we were talking about that will start construction this summer. Our construction at Marston is going to be very comprehensive. It combines basically 2 prop SZYY, if I have all the letters correct, all in one. And so we're just a few months away. We are completely vacating one whole building at the end of the school year. That whole all those rooms, a block of 8 rooms, will be renovated, Takes about 4 months to do that. Over the summer, they're going to rip out all the concrete and around the concrete walkways, I should say, throughout the campus to make them ADA compliant. And then we're going to start, building this gym and replace the terrible DG athletic fields that we've had, and it's going to be natural grass. It's going to take each project has a different timeline. Looking at a couple, some of them take 4 months, some of them take 2-3 years. So everything should be done though in about 3 years, and it's just exciting that it's around the corner. If I can share my screen, we sent this letter out, or elementary principals sent this letter out on behalf of Marston, which just announces some upcoming events. So you'll see that we have 5th grade students coming to us in just a couple of weeks, which is really exciting. So some of the schools are going to come on the 17th and some will come on the 18th. And then we're going to do the same for 4th grade. And I appreciate the district's support for that. Make sure this can happen. The choice window happens each year in early November. So we have the tours in the spring. So people like 4th graders are just familiar with our campus. They get all their questions asked. So by the time in the fall, they know what to do. And in most cases, they come to Marston, which is great. We will have an open house on April 14th. And then I put in some dates there for, August, when we're looking at next school year already. Another cool thing that came out is the announcement of middle school sports. So I've been working a little bit with the coordinator of middle school athletics. His name's Lonnie Jones. He's done an awesome job just getting everything ready. So this spring there's going to be soccer, and we announced that to students today. The tryouts are March 14th already, so there will be a soccer season with schools throughout the district. And then you can see here at the bottom, or right here, that there'll be additional sports for next school year. And then when Marston has the gym complete, I believe it's Marston and I want to say Wilson, I believe. We will be the first 2 middle schools with gymnasiums, and some of the games will move from the high school venues to the middle school venues as things are constructed. So a lot of cool stuff going on. I'm really excited, like others mentioned, about COVID protocols being relaxed, because we could do more and more. And so I was talking with our music teacher today about upcoming concerts, and it's just it's been a tough couple of years, but I'm really looking forward to being able to do the things that we were used to be able to do.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Well, there's obviously, as you can imagine, tons of stuff happening here at Clairemont, probably more than we have time for, but I just wanted to touch in kind of on a couple key points. As I mentioned earlier, we're sort of at that time where we're starting to plan to say goodbye to our seniors, those young boys and girls that we had that have grown into some amazing young men and women, and also beginning to plan to welcome these incoming freshmen for next year. So we have a number of events planned for seniors: a senior barbecue, a senior breakfast, grad night, as well as a number of events planned for our incoming 9th graders next year. We have an academy or an 8th grade experience day where we invite students over from Marston and feeder elementary or middle schools to sort of experience the academy life and what high school is going to look like, and support them as they begin to make decisions about the different academies that they're going to be applying for. And also in terms of welcoming, this is a not Clairemont, well, maybe it's somewhat of a Clairemont related issue, but come this September, on a side note, my wife and I'm going to be taking a little time off because we're going to be welcoming our 7th little child into the world, which is super exciting. I know it's hard when you say 7 out loud, but we're super excited about that. So that's part of our, or at least part of my plans as well. So not only is the Williams family enrollment continuing to grow, but Clairemont High School's enrollment is continuing to grow. For the 3rd year in a row, we've seen an increase in our enrollment, which I cannot take any of the credit for this. This is all my colleagues on the Zoom here, all of my elementary principals, and I know Jonathan as well. One of the things I've loved about being the principal at Clairemont is not just our school, but getting to work with just people who are so passionate about connecting here with the community and connecting here to Clairemont. And I have been the beneficiary of that as our enrollment continues to grow, and seeing families get excited about the things we're doing at Clairemont, which is really exciting. We're shifting to our spring sports. So we have We have baseball, softball going on, badminton, boys volleyball, a lot of things happening. And so our fall or winter season came to an end. We had a few teams that made some really good runs at some playoff opportunities. Our girls water polo in Division I went all the way to the CIF championship game where they lost a really close game. But it was an exciting time for those young ladies and for that program. Speaking of athletics and aquatics, Clairemont High School is going to be piloting a unified athletic program. It's going to be the first high school in San Diego Unified to pilot this program, where it really stresses a more unified approach between the PE, the general ed PE, and the adaptive PE, or the PE for students with special needs. So we're partnering with folks at the Special Olympics, and they're going to be providing some funding and some staffing and some support to do that. And one of those things is an aquatic unit. And so starting this week, actually yesterday, we had all of our students walk over to the Clairemont pool, our students with special needs, our general ed students, to do some aquatic work and some swimming at the pool, which was really exciting. It was a really sunny day yesterday. We're not sure what we're going to do tomorrow because it's supposed to rain, but we'll see how it goes. Our theater is alive and well. They have their spring performance of Once Upon a Mattress. We'll get dates out as soon as we have all that figured out, and there may or may not be a guest performance from someone who looks an awful lot like the principal. The theater kids were hoping to embarrass him, so come on out. It'll be fun either way. Our internship program continues to grow. For those of you who know, we have an internship program for our seniors here at Clairemont. We have a vision to grow that so that every senior can be enrolled in an internship. This spring, we have 70 of our seniors out in the community at a variety of different internships. Some of them are with colleagues at the Feeder Elementary and Feeder Middle, but other students are out at State Farm, Mossy Toyota, Mossy Nissan, the Boz Institute, various biomedical research facilities. So we have kids all over Clairemont and all over San Diego County doing some really amazing things. So I want to pause right there. I don't want to put him on the spot, but I know our area superintendent, Steve Elizondo, is here. And before we jump into our presentations, Steve, I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to share or any updates you wanted to give. But if so, the floor is yours.
I'd love to. Thanks, Ethan, and thanks, everybody. Ethan, can you give me a screen share privileges? I just have like 30 or 35 slides to share. I'm just kidding, actually. I just have a couple slides to share, folks. I want to thank the families for being here, and just a huge shout out to the principals. You just listening to all of you seriously can feel that joy, and just what you're bringing to the school sites every day, bringing to the students, bringing to the families. Wonderful. So can you see the LCAP screen there?
Yep.
Okay, great. Just making sure, because I got double screens going on. So I always like to start with this one. This just kind of roots us, reconnects us with our district focus. These 6 goals are LCAP goals. And so pretty much everything we do in San Diego Unified at all the sites are going to be connected to these 6 goals, one of these 6 goals, or more than one. Just give you a moment to reconnect with those. All right. You know that we are in the midst of the superintendent search, which is finally winding down. I know it's dragged on and on. It's pushed back a bit because of COVID. This event just happened this past Saturday. I was able to go in person. It was really wonderful. It was also on Zoom, so some of you might have seen that on Zoom. Just a great forum. I think the moderator did a great job questioning the public that were really specific, and both candidates addressed them. So exciting stuff. And we should be finding out this month the final decision here on our new superintendent. Health and safety guidance. Some of the principals already spoke about this a little bit, but just to name a few of them, field trips are permitted to resume indoor and outdoor. These are relatively new updates here. Mask no longer required outdoors. Which was, I know a lot of students and staff were really excited about that one. Athletic programs, thanks Ethan, you spoke about some of the great stuff going on over at Clairemont High, resuming their normal sports and indoor events and activities. A lot of people working for those, visual and performing arts and stuff like that. Those are permitted to resume. So positive news there. Now, I know that one of the big questions is like, indoor masking, as we read in the paper and see on the news, updated guidance from the state and things like that. So I know folks are waiting for that. Just note that our district does have meetings twice a week to discuss COVID and what's going on in San Diego County in particular. So we should be getting some guidance in the near future around indoor masking and other aspects. And last thing I wanted to mention was just, obviously there's been so much talk of COVID this year and last year, and just to reiterate what a lot of the principals said, we're really since day one, even though it's been certainly more challenging, the focus has still been on academics and joy in the classrooms. And so continue to stay focused with standards-based instruction at all grade levels in all subject areas, balanced literacy, a focus on TK through 2 literacy instruction, and things like that. So just want to point that out because so much talk has been focused on COVID lately, and just noting that we remain focused on academics as well all year. So again, huge shout out to the principals and all the staff, teachers at the schools for just making it happen, and you families for hanging in there with us. And thanks for the time, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. In terms of kind of the next portion of our agenda, we wanted to shift a little bit. I know that a lot of the principals shared they were in the process of, or maybe had already completed their SBB, their budget for next year. Our site, and like a lot of sites, sent out a needs assessment to talk to staff and students and families about, what did they see as different priorities. And I know at Clairemont High School, one of the things that we heard from a lot of families especially was this idea of finding mental health supports for students. I was talking with Stephen the other day, Principal Lewis and Principal Golias, just kind of about students reacclimating to school. And there definitely have been some bumps along the way, and, some definite successes, but also that idea of kids being away from their peers and away from their teachers and away from the safety of some of those communities and clubs and sports that they participated in. I think as a principal, I always speak for myself, we see the effects of that. And so I know that both as a principal and now in her new role as the executive director of the Office of Leadership and Learning, Nicole DeWitt has always been a champion for the idea of supporting students, not only academically, but in all aspects that contribute to their health and well-being. And so I know that this is work that Nicole started when she was the principal at Scripps Ranch and has continued in this current role. So we asked Nicole to come and share a little bit about the district in terms of mental health supports and some of the things that are happening not only in our cluster, but around the district. So Nicole, welcome to the cluster.
Thanks for having me, everyone. It's nice to see all your faces. Happy to be here. Brings back memories of when I had my Scripps cluster meetings. So always a fun time to connect with colleagues and parents. So I'm going to share my screen so I can share a little bit about our journeys so far with goal 1 of the LCAP, specifically when we're talking about supporting our students. So all of this information has been shared throughout the year at board meetings, but I wanted to specifically highlight some of our strides with mental health. So in particular, back in June, when we first presented the LCAP, we shared with the board this pyramid, this tiered pyramid of support. And so in this pyramid, that very first level would be tier 1, that would be accessible to all students. So all students would have access to these services. And then tier 2 would be for students who need a little bit more support than tier 1 can provide. And then tier 3 would really be those targeted crisis supports. So when we have students that are really in crisis and really in need of some more intensive individual support. So with that pyramid in mind, we begin to figure out how can we bring more services to our school sites directly. So one of the things that we've been focusing on is our counselor supports. We did increase our counselor allocation for this school year and plan to maintain that counselor allocation for the following school year, 22-23. So in the past, elementary counselors could be divided amongst 3 different school sites, which means there were some school sites that maybe were only receiving 1 day of counseling. This school year, the largest amount of schools they can serve is 2. So we know that every elementary school has at least 2 days of counseling. Some elementary schools have 3 days of counseling as well. For our secondary schools, what we tried to do was avoid having partial counselors. So instead of having, 4.5 counselors, they were rounding that up to the nearest whole counselor. So that way there would be more access to counseling services. So our counselors have been attending a lot of trainings on how to interact and log those interactions within PowerSchool so we can see how often they're supporting our students. So they received a counselor toolkit that was provided by our district team that had a lot of great resources in the 3 areas that are part of the American School Counseling Association. So that's social emotional learning, college and career, and academic. We've had a partnership with Leader in Me at the elementary and middle school levels to implement small group SEL. We also have access to a system called Zello, which helps to provide more college and career lessons and planning. All of our counselors attended an Engaging Students 101 professional development before the school year started. And then a lot of our school sites are involved with the Anti-Defamation League's No Place for Hate. So on this screen, you can see these are the amount of contacts that counselors had during the first semesters. So starting August 30th through November 30th, and the types of contacts that they had. So you can see at the elementary level, there's a lot more social emotional contacts happening at the beginning of the school year. And then we'll start to build more towards the college and career and academic. And you see a little bit of the reverse with the middle and the high school levels, where we see a little bit more of the academic, and then we build up towards the social emotional learning. So again, this represents just August through November of this current school year. And then in addition, we do have our Mental Health Resource Center. Our Mental Health Resource Center has primarily focused on services for early prevention, so a pre-K through 3rd that are at 54 of our school sites, where more than 1,000 students are receiving small group SEL. And then we do have a couple different pilot programs that are made available through Price Philanthropies. Many of the Mental Health Resource Center services are based on need, so particularly for students that qualify for Medi-Cal or have services that are outlined in their IEP. That is primarily how our Mental Health Resource Center serves those families. We also have partnerships that are available through some of our community partners. So we do have a partnership with the McAllister Institute that actually provides substance prevention and vaping education classes for our middle and high school students. So if students, are caught vaping at school or caught under the influence, they would be referred to these education classes in lieu of suspension. So these are some of our alternative to suspension programs. We also have partnerships with the county behavioral health that provide a school link, teen recovery centers, and outpatient programs. Again, those are primarily for students who qualify for Medi-Cal and services through their IEP. We have some existing partnerships with San Diego State that provide some social emotional learning to our younger students. And then we also have another partnership with San Diego State called Project Impact, where they're at particular school sites within our district. And then we do have partnerships with Mending Matters that provides more intensive services. As I mentioned, we have teen recovery centers. Right now, we have 7 different teen recovery centers at 7 of our different high schools. And then for our students who receive services through their IEP, we do have clinicians that work with those students at many of our school sites, including our Marcy Riley New Dawn school site. But I think one of the most exciting things that happened this year is that we were able to use some of our ESSER 3 COVID relief funds to expand services to include more students. So as I mentioned, many of the services we had existing for mental health were for students who qualified for Medi-Cal or had the services in their IEP. But now, starting this past January, we did start rolling out more services to our school sites with mental health clinicians that are able to provide both one-on-one and group therapy. So we've contracted with 6 different mental health service providers that are listed here, and we tried to assign the providers by cluster. So for instance, in this cluster in Clairemont, that would be the same service provider for both the middle school and the high school. So that way they can see a little bit more comprehensive view of what's happening in the cluster and some of the needs of that particular community. For our elementary schools, they all are served by our San Diego State partnership. Elementary mental health services are a little different than secondary. So we wanted to make sure that we contracted with a provider that we had an existing partnership with that knows how to work with elementary students when it comes to their mental health needs. So our goal and our hope is that we can serve an additional 8,000 students per year with these new services. And again, these services are on site. So it's services that students access on campus, and it's open to any student. So any student can be referred to receive more support through one-on-one and group. So our expansion started in January. We currently have mental health services in our Canyon Hills, Clairemont, Kearney, La Jolla, Lincoln, Morris, University City clusters, as well as Virtual Academy. We just finished onboarding service providers for our Mira Mesa, Mission Bay, Point Loma, and Scripps Ranch communities. And our elementary students can now be referred as needed. And then we do expect to hire more service providers, particularly to serve our San Diego and Crawford clusters, and have a few more clinicians available for our elementary school sites. So our next steps are to update our policies and procedures for suicide prevention. We do want to make sure that we're responding in a way that's very supportive, but also making sure that we are promoting help-seeking behaviors with our students and that they know where to go if they're feeling a time of stress. We are in the process of completing a district needs assessment for mental health and wellness services in partnership with the JED Foundation, which is a national organization that's worked with many large districts like New York City schools to help identify some of our gaps and where we could continue to expand services. And then we are establishing partnerships with our local universities to support the field work of aspiring mental health professionals. So students, graduate students that are getting ready to get their clinician's license, they do have to provide a certain amount of hours out in the field. And so we are contracting those partnerships with them for them to be able to complete those hours within our school sites, which will in turn provide more services for our students. And with that, I'm happy to, I don't know, Ethan, what the format is, if I stop and questions are later, but happy to answer now if there's any.
Yeah, no, that's great, Nicole. Thanks. And I just, in terms of just a shout out to Nicole, I know at Clairemont High School specifically, this has been a huge support to us and to our counseling staff and our students. So I know sometimes we talk about policies and funding and all of that, but at the end of the day, I know in terms of the impact it's having for the kids at Clairemont, I mean, I'm thinking of 3 or 4 in my head right now that this has just been so helpful for. So, but yeah, we'll stop really quickly. I don't know if there are any questions or comments before we jump over to Tom.
I just want to say, Nicole, it is amazing to have the opportunity for elementary kiddos to have the supports, because that's been the biggest hurdle at our site. We've never had enough, to qualify for a provider that can just see a lot of kids. So this is just, it's been an amazing gift. And it's not that we have that many friends that need that support, but the ones that do, it's just such a blessing. So thank you so much. And thank you to the team, because it is really what we need right now for our families and our kiddos and our staff. So thank you.
I echo that, Linda. And, we talk about having a proactive approach to, like, say, literacy and mathematics, and the same holds true for mental health needs. So super happy that these expanded services.
And one thing I forgot to mention is that it's not just for this school year. So we have access to this funding for the next 2 school years, for 22-23 and 23-24. And I know our board is very committed to supporting that beyond the time that those funds are available. So it's not just going to be this school year, which is good. Great news.
Awesome. Yeah, Crystal, looks like you had your hand up.
Yeah, quick question. Nicole, thank you for being here. I mean, I've seen you present and I'm still learning stuff every time I hear you, so thank you. 2 questions. Do you know if we can tap into any of the provider data or even collect data ourselves as a district, kind of the efficacy or the kind of a pre and post of how well we're delivering the services, if these services are really mattering, just to make sure that, we're putting our resources where they need to be, being very efficient with the resources. And then will the needs assessment be made public? The results?
Two really great questions. So for the first one, we actually wrote into the contracts with our private partners benchmarks that and expectations of the amount of children we expect them to serve per month, and just in the contract in general. And so we are collecting that data internally to monitor how many students they're serving, how well the services are going. And so we will be interacting with our principals as well, just to make sure that things are going smoothly when the providers are on the campus. And we did build in some flexibility in our contracting to where if we need to make a shift or an adjustment, we're able to do that. So we will be monitoring that data internally to make sure that the providers are meeting those goals that we've set in the contracts. And then as far as the needs assessment and if that will be made public, I'll have to loop back to you on that one. I'm not sure what the protocol is with the JED Foundation and their release of information. So I'll have to get back to you on that one because they haven't yet shared the format in which they share the information, but I do know that they partner with a university in the collection of the data. So I would assume that at some point it would be public, but I'll check on that.
Excellent. Any other questions for Nicole? All righty. Well, Nicole, thank you so much. And there's some sentiments in the chat as well, but it sounds like just some great supports for kids, and glad that it's something that will continue not only for this year, but definitely in years to come. So, and so in terms of shifting gears a little bit, I know that we talked a little bit about our site-based budgets, and we heard principals sharing that they're sort of in the process of that. And in talking with Crystal, I think Crystal Troll, who's my parent liaison, as we started to think a little bit about where we are in the time frame of us as principals, we wanted to also bring families and community members into that process as well. So we asked Tom to come and share a little bit about the SBB process. And so Tom is the Director of Strategic Planning and Student Achievement. So who better to come and share about that than the great Tom Liberto. So Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ethan. I appreciate that. Always a joy to come and spend time with you all. So let a little secret out. I kind of look forward to the invitation. I'm like, did they invite me again yet? Did they invite me again yet? Not really, but I am very excited to be here. So Ethan did a good job of stating what the request was. And I figured most of you're pretty involved if you're not a principal because you're here. And so you probably sit on your SSC and have been through the process. So I didn't want to just rehearse for you what the process was that we just went through. I did a little higher level, and I'm going to go through it rather quickly, but it's really kind of where the money comes from. And so I always start with this cycle, and that cycle never changes. The things that are inside of those little rounded cubes there that circle that budget cycle are pretty much always the same. So we're in mid-March right now, or early March, and the second interim is due. The interims, and we go up to 3 a year, they're basically checkpoints on how we're doing. So we make budgeting and then we follow spending over a certain period of time and we see where we are. Are we on track? Do we need to make adjustments? We also make decisions for next year, even though you will see that the governor doesn't finish his budget until June. We have to start making decisions now and even earlier about where we think we are. Are we going to have a deficit? Are we going to be able to buy things that we need to hire people, so on and so forth? So I tell you that because next Tuesday, the second interim report is going to the Board of Education. So if you can attend the board meeting virtually next week or check board docs later, you should see the presentation to kind of tell you how we are doing right now. Again, state budget isn't adopted and passed until June 15th, but we're doing the best we can to keep up with projections and where we are, so on and so forth. So tonight we're going to go over general fund a little bit, LCFF, and then obviously Title I, which was part of the big ask. So the general fund is just that. It's general money that we get from various sources, mostly taxes, comes in from lots of different places, but these are dollars that don't really have any strings attached. So we can spend these dollars on whatever we might need to. And as you hear my dog in the background, I apologize. But we get categorical funds, which are Title I, LCFF. Those have strings attached, but to spend those dollars, we really need to have a base. And what I mean by that, and I always try and give this example, Nicole gave the counseling ratios where she said we upped or lowered the number of schools that the counselors could be. So there's a base out of general fund that we have a formula for where counselors are providing a service at every school, Title I or not. Then Title I dollars can build above and beyond that. So this, the 00010 is what we call it, are general base allocations, and they're formulaic. So most positions, counselors, office staff, teaching ratio, 24:1 at the elementary school, 32.13, I think it is at the middle, so on and so forth. Sites also receive discretionary funds, which is the all zeros, custodial, I didn't list them all out there, but athletics and the 00021. The hint is that they all start with 3 zeros. So anything connected to that, you know, is general fund money, no strings attached. It's mostly for operations. And then in your 09800, it's your LCFF. This gets a little bit more detailed here, and I don't want to read it to you, but I want to make sure that we get all of the points there. Excuse me. All schools will get LCFF money, and it's funded on English learners, low income, and foster youth. Now, the state doesn't duplicate those. It's one or the other. Our district has duplicated them. So you'll see on the 4th bullet, duplicating the unduplicated allocated process. And that stands for $119 currently for every child that qualifies as one of those 3 factors. So multiply that times 3, you can do the math. It comes out to, you know, $360 some dollars or $50 some dollars if a child is all 3 of those. And that's where our LCFF allocations come from. It really allows a school the flexibility to address specific needs for their, they call it unduplicated, although we duplicate. And they should fall within the categories of intervention support. So unlike Title I, where it has to go to just Title I schools, we can spend these dollars on every child as long as the intent of the strategy or the intervention is for the children that qualify under those factors. What I mean by that, let's say there is a reading program that you want to buy with LCFF. Well, it's really for our English learners and our low income and our foster youth, but you're not going to exclude children that aren't qualifying from theirs once you make the purchase. As long as those students that are qualifying are not being excluded, you can run an inclusive program. That's a really important factor because a lot of people with Title I say, well, it's not a Title I school, we can't spend money there. LCFF is a little different. As long as they have students that are qualifying, they can. Again, it's focusing on the whole child model. So what expenses are allowed in 9800? I'm just going to leave that up there for a little bit, but I've already talked through most of it. It's not real stringent like Title I, as long as it is addressing the needs of those duplicated students in one form or fashion. Most cases, it's going to be okay. You see the second bullet there says there's no definite, this is okay, that's not okay. It's really how you explain you're going to use it and if it's truly targeting those students. So a sample LCFF justification could be attendance assistant position if you're significantly combating the chronic absenteeism. Obviously, that person's going to take attendance for all students. Hence, you go back to not just on those students that you're spending the dollars, but that could be something that you want to spend dollars on. And the reason we put those 3 bullets down at the bottom is because we have to have justifications for all of this. Principals are very aware when you're spending Title I dollars, especially, or LCFF dollars, if you're moving them, especially, and you're doing a transfer, we're not going to let you do it without a justification. And that's because we're asked about it. And so we have to have those justifications. Those 3 bullets need to be satisfied for you to be able to allocate those dollars accordingly. That brings us to what Title I is. And it's intended to be, as I said, supplemental to the core program. So that general fund money, any resource that starts with 3 zeros and then has 2 digits after it, is general fund money. That would be core program. We can spend Title I money above and beyond that. So according to federal law, it can be used for non-instruction, behavior supports, attendance, different things like that, if they show to help student achievement. So the base allocations, I don't know if I'm moving your pictures all around because for some reason it's not fitting on my screen well, but I don't know if you can see it or not, but we do have the allocations for the district on the bottom. We give base allocations in Title I school sites. This year it was 18,600,000. Supplemental allocations, which this year was 8.2. And then parent involvement, I didn't put a number there because it kind of fluctuates, but it is a percentage of our overall Title I entitlement. And pictures here so I can see my screen. So Title I starts with 3010. So you notice all of these are the same resource codes with a different ending. The 3100 is your base allocation, 3103 is parent involvement, 3106 is supplemental. They do need to be linked to the SPSA. So I heard previous conversation earlier about needs assessments and how we're going to spend our money. Boy, I could have done a backflip. I was so happy to hear that language because that's exactly what we, and I probably will do a backflip later, but I'm going to turn my camera off before I do it. So that is exactly the language we need to hear how we're spending these dollars. So that's the rationales for the Title I. They do have to be tied and justified in your SPSA. Just some sample spending for Title I, allowables and not allowables. Hourly time to support instruction, hourly time for supervision or security would not be allowable. I'm not going to read it to you, but it goes through the list and it's very self-explanatory. If it supports instruction, pretty much allowable. So I don't know how deep I want to go into this, but I did want to give an overview of how Title I is allocated. So for our base allocation, it's based on free and reduced lunch. And it's for schools that have 40% or more of their students who qualify as being in poverty. Now I say free and reduced lunch. We used to use meal cards to figure that out. Now everybody's on LCFF because the state is asking us not to use meal cards because every child's eating for free. So we're back to LCFF for everybody. Like I said, it was 18.6 million and it came out to be $558.75 per student at the 99% level. This is the crux of this conversation. For every percentage a school is below 99%, then we take $5.50 out of that $558.75. So if you are 10 points below, we're going to take $55.50 out of the $558.75. The rationale for that, the board believes, based on very solid studies, is that schools that have higher concentrations of students in poverty need more money to address those concerns. And so as a school gets down into the 60s and the 50s and maybe even the 40s, the board believes that those schools that are at 99%, 97% need a higher portion of those dollars. And I put a couple of samples there just to kind of show you how the allocations came out this year multiplied by the student. Principal Williams, I don't think I've sent you this yet, but I will email this to you right after the presentation so you can post it on your cluster webpage or if anybody wants to look at it more. I apologize, I didn't do it earlier. And there's the supplemental, and the supplemental is at $90.45 for each qualifying factor. Now, just like LCFF, we pulled more qualifying factors out for the supplemental. One is just being meal eligible, one is English learner, another chronic absenteeism, down the list. A child, if they're all three of those, then they would get, your school would get for that child alone 6 times the 90.45. If they qualify for 3, for that child, it would be $90.45 times 3. Same spending guidelines as Title I, because it is Title I money. It's just a different way of us allocating. These are dollars that used to be housed centrally to provide support at Title I schools. About 4 years ago, we made the decision to not provide those centrally, push them out to the school sites and let you all decide how you wanted to use those dollars. So when I was a principal, I always wanted it to be that way. So when I got into this position, I pushed hard to make sure it was. And hopefully the principals and communities are enjoying that flexibility. Again, this is just basically to say both LCFF and Title I need to align with your SPSA. I know I'm running out of time. This goes back to the second interim. So based on our second interim report, which will be made public on Tuesday for the board, it's tracking activity from July 1st to January 31st, and we're making projections out to the end of the year. Also taking into account the governor's proposed budget and any guidance from the county. It does cover 3 years. Now, the impacts from what we are getting from the governor is that he is proposing to change the way we do attendance. So it used to be we could use this year's attendance or last year's. He's proposing using a 3-year run. Now, I know that Ethan is doing all he can to get our population back up and our enrollment in schools with the announcement of his child, but we are in a declining enrollment. So that proposal does really help us. And I believe that we as a district are probably going to move to the average if that is approved and passed. There are significant new investments in categorical, as Nicole shared, $600 million in categoricals through the pandemic over the next 3 years. So we've spent much of that already, but there's lots more to be supported through those dollars. However, when those federal dollars do go away, we are projecting that it's going to be a factor to deal with, that the budgets, not only for us, but statewide, are probably going to be an issue. So with that, I hope I hit the 10-minute mark. I think I was pretty close. But any questions if anybody has any?
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. I'm always impressed at your ability to take things that can be quite complicated and explain them so clearly. So, but yes, we'll definitely pause and if you send over that presentation, we'll make sure we get that out to our community. So I don't know if anybody does have any questions for Tom.
I have a quick question, if you don't mind, Tom.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here too. I've been hearing rumors that the legislature is going to move to an enrollment-based funding formula rather than attendance. What is your thought around that, and what have you learned or possibility of that?
I think it would be better for us, in my opinion, but I know that we're probably a little ways away from that. They're talking about it, but it hasn't gotten as much traction as what I just announced about the 3-year average. I think we're probably going to go in baby steps. I can't imagine that they won't go there, because we're hearing that districts all over are having trouble with the attendance, especially with the pandemic. So you plan, let's just say in our district, 100,000 students, but because of the pandemic, you're only getting 80 on a certain day, which I hope our attendance isn't that bad. But we get funded on that 80 for that day, which grossly impacts our budget. So I hope they move that direction. I think that they probably will, but I think it's going to probably take longer than anybody wants.
Great. Any other questions, either for Tom or for any of the principals while we're here? Use my teacher wait time here. So, well, I just want to thank Tom, and I know Nicole had to jump off here for coming out and sharing. I know Crystal and I talk about this a lot, but ensuring that we inform communities about the policies and the procedures and the practices that impact our children, I think is critical to the work we do. So before we close, because like I said, I'm an end on time kind of guy, and I have 1 minute, it looks like, but I just wanted to share 2 quick announcements. So Ali Martinez, who oversees the math resource team in San Diego Unified, has been working with Patrick Callahan. There's an assessment called the DEMI. Some of you may have heard of this. I know the principals have, but there's a presentation that they asked me to share with our community. So they have a video that they recorded. I'm going to send that out to principals, and they can find the best way to share that with their families. After we get that video out, they wanted to give families an opportunity to come to an event where they can share feedback, ask questions. And so we'll send that out to our communities when we get that info. But I just wanted to give folks a heads up that I'll be sharing that video with principals, and they'll find a way to share that. And then last but not least, I wanted to remind folks that we do have our own CCOS website, a Google site. Thanks to Principal Golias for putting this together. I put that in the chat. That is going to be the best way to get the most up-to-date information, because that's a website that John and myself and the rest of the principals have the ability to update without going to folks at the district or folks in IT. But I will email them about getting that changed on the district's website. And it also does, at the very bottom of that, give you an opportunity, either as a principal or a community member, to submit agenda items. I know Crystal and I work really hard to make sure that we invite people who are talking about things that we think families and parents and staff would want to hear about. But it makes our life a whole lot easier creating agendas that meet your needs when folks share with us who they want to hear from. So whether those are principals or staff members, or especially parents, please let us know if there are people you would like to hear from or programs you'd like to hear about. We're happy to do the work and get those people here, because as you can see, Tom and Nicole, and I know the rest of the folks at the district office are always happy to come and share with families and communities. So unless there are any other questions, I just want to thank everybody for joining us and remind you that our next and last meeting for this school year is going to be on May 12th. We'll send out some reminders in our various communications as principals. And until then, be safe, and we'll see everybody in May.